Good evening. Welcome to Your Mental Health Matters. My name is Crystal Kelly, and I'm your host this evening, brought to you by ONV. So tonight, we are back with an exciting topic regarding mental health. So tonight, we're going to tap into PTSD. I know a lot of times people hear that. People don't know what it's about or who experienced or what type of symptoms that come with it. But tonight, we're just going to break it down on what is post-traumatic stress syndrome.
All right.
Let's get into it, fellas, ladies.
All right. So PTSD.
Yes.
You want to start?
Go ahead, start. Let's tap into
PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder,
Yes.
is a condition that is experienced by people who have experienced any trauma in their lives. We're seeing it a lot more often these
Yes.
days. And it's not just the victim. It could be the family members.
Right.
It could be your neighbors or in the neighborhood. And this is the focus. This month is observation of PTSD and what it is. I do know some things that I have been reading about PTSD is saying that term at the end, disorder, it should be kind of changed or reevaluated.
Right.
Because what PTSD does is like a natural reaction that our body has
Yes.
to events that we've experienced. So I guess we can define just basically what it is and how to look for it in certain individuals, and then also give them the resources that they need to cope with it or go see a professional.
Yeah. So I know a lot of times when I get somebody that comes in experiencing, different things that they had experienced with trauma, and when it comes to the end of the intake, and I say, hey, okay, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm hearing, there's some PTSD going on. And people are kind of taken back by that because a lot of times when we hear PTSD, it's associated with the military.
Right.
It's a military thing.
Not always the case. It is a part of that.
Right.
But that's not always the case because you can have an individual that had trauma from their childhood and certain things, and I might be jumping around, but certain
fine.
things that may trigger it. I do know that when they diagnose the PTSD, it's usually 6 months after the event, and then not being able to cope or go to, I guess, a quote unquote back to a normal life.
Right. Functioning.
Right.
Yeah.
It's one of those diagnoses for me. I think it's both overdiagnosed and underdiagnosed.
Right.
I think that it's, like you said, the disorder part of it, it really does interfere with the person's functioning.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, you can experience trauma and not have PTSD.
That's true.
Right.
That's true.
But there's a lot of times where people do experience trauma and it fits the clinical criteria for PTSD. Yeah. But then there's other things that kind of come along to mask it.
Yeah.
So alcohol, what I mean? Drugs stuff like that. Even, relationships, jumping from relationship to relationship. These things can, again, mask the actual symptoms, but, these people are the walking wounded, they're hurting. And,
that's right.
Yeah, so it's tricky, and that's why I think I like to kind of you want to get the right eyes on the issue. I think you know what I mean. You want to talk to get the diagnosis. Don't diagnose yourself.
Please
don't.
I see that all the time too.
Right.
Oh, I know I got PTSD. Well, how do you get PTSD? Oh, I got hit with a dodgeball when I was in kindergarten. That's PTSD.
No,
you just suck at dodgeball.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
What do they call it? What do they call it?
Move, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's not what I mean. But it'll come to me.
All right, it'll come back. So let's talk about symptoms. Let's talk about what does PTSD look like? If you're thinking about how it impacts functioning, how we function every day.
The common symptoms: nightmares,
that's
flashbacks, panic attacks, something that may not even seem the same, but is similar enough.
Right.
I use the example, I explained it to the clients I worked with in the past. It's like, soldier comes back from Iraq and here's a firecracker and he jumps behind the couch, Now, he knows it's not an AK-47 shooting at him. Right? He's not in Iraq. He's in a cul-de-sac in Fort Wayne, Indiana somewhere. But at that time, his body responds. Similar becomes same, And in his mind, he's not even thinking, oh, that's a firecracker or, oh, there's someone shooting at me. His mind's back in war, back in the traumatic situation.
So those are defined as some of the triggers,
right?
That like that firecracker going off, or even the senses can bring about triggers of an individual going into PTSD, and that's like certain things you smell,
right?
Maybe it was a certain scent that you smelled on maybe an attacker, right? And I hate to say that, but that's kind of what it is. And if an individual smells that or hears a certain sound,
takes them right back to
the actual trauma or actual event. So I thought that was very interesting to know. And
I always heard it told like the brain can't plan for the past. You know what I mean? All it's doing is trying to create an emotion today to keep you safe, to get you to move. And that action, it doesn't match the situation. You know what I mean? Like the guy jumping behind his couch.
Right.
It's 4th of July. You know what I mean? Doesn't match the situation. And you might even see, like, you can see a guy, maybe he doesn't have as severe reaction. He hears the firecracker and jumps. Right. He doesn't jump behind his couch. He just startles. You're like, hey, are you okay? He's like, yeah, no, I hate firecrackers on 4th of July. It reminds me of being in war. We would still say, hey, he's better off than the guy that jumped behind the couch.
Right.
But he's still experiencing some kind of symptom of trauma.
That's it.
He still jumped involuntarily when he heard it. But he's just consciously controlling himself. And so, again, I think that goes back to people not understanding what's actually happening with the trauma. I had a guy who had a serious trauma around a specific church group, and he would see like their stickers on the back of a car, and he would have these crazy violent road rage episodes.
Oh, wow.
And he just always thought he had anger problems. Well, it turned out when he actually got diagnosed and sought treatment, it was anxiety from PTSD. So,
that's interesting. And then with the PTSD, I've also heard it correlated with the kids living in impoverished neighborhoods when they witness a lot of violence. And the difference with those kids and a service person is that the service people generally have a day that they can get out of that war zone or whatever it is.
They do
like, in about a month I can go home and be out of this environment. Whereas the kids in the neighborhood, they don't have that choice. And it's like a constant thing. And what happens with that is if they're growing up in that, having that stress on them constantly and growing up in it, that toxicity, that then goes into other things like the blood pressure, the high blood pressure, the depression, the anger. All of that is contributed to kids having a form of PTSD when they're young because of the neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah. So and they're labeling it now too. CPTSD.
Yeah, complex.
It's got a C with the little hyphen.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, CPTSD. Okay. And again, think about that. If your brain, a young developing brain, is being flooded with stress hormones, day in and day out.
Cortisol. Is that what the C stands for?
Okay. Not this childhood, I think. Childhood PTSD. Okay. But hey,
but that's what it is.
That's what it is. That's the stress hormone.
Triggers that stress hormone, and then when that is a constant in anybody's life, then that starts breaking down your body in other ways.
Well, and you had mentioned too, like a service member, they've been trained. They kind of have an expectation of what combat's going to be, and they don't know till they know, obviously, but they're at least operating with a most times fully developed brain, but that prefrontal cortex, doesn't develop until you're 24, 25 for males.
Right there.
So, and again, if there's trauma in the past, that can delay that development as well. So then you can also have a very immature 40-year-old because they've experienced a lot of trauma, and they, so
it's a lot of science behind it. It really is. It's just not like, the diagnosing part. I mean, there's science behind why our bodies is responding to whatever that trigger is in that moment. I mean, if you even take it further to your baby in your womb. You
Yeah.
know, the mom experiencing
That's a very
the
good
trauma,
point.
the stress.
That's a very good point.
I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness,
And
that's serious.
that's one thing they don't talk about a lot.
Yeah, I don't say
the
that.
impact of mothers in carrying their babies or infants, because their stress is directly, impacting that baby. And what they don't understand is why is this kid so emotional or so this or that with behavior.
It's a real thing.
And it is directly related to that.
Yeah.
And then think about how that also can impact that bonding between the mother and the
that's
infant.
huge.
You know what I mean? So it's maybe it's a little personal, but my wife and I have had a couple pretty crazy pregnancies, deliveries that were, I'd say, traumatic for her. I would definitely say it was traumatic for her, and it takes time to really heal that. And being in the field and knowing what it is didn't protect her. You know what I mean?
Right.
It didn't make it any easier, you know? So that's another thing too. I'm glad you brought that up. But mothers need to, I think it's something we need to be more aware of, is how childbirth can really, traumatize the body, mind, and spirit. I mean,
Man, it's all
Not
connected.
just gestation, the whole entire pregnancy, how, what they go through is directly impacting those babies. That's
and again, you don't know till you know. Nobody knows until they have that baby and you get home, you know what I mean? And now you don't have the lactation consultant and the 37 nurses that's been coming.
Yeah,
Straight up.
Yeah. And you don't know the symptoms of the baby could be stress.
Right.
Yeah. So
that's a whole nother topic.
That-
that we
sure
can tap
is.
into. That's
Sure
a
is.
whole nother topic. Yes,
That's a good
But this
one.
is good though. I'm glad we're tapping into this because I think a lot of people don't really dive into what that PTSD looks like and what comes from that. So we got if we're talking about how does it impact our functioning. So if we're talking to a person who may be dealing with some things, what's some things that we can tell them when it comes to functioning?
I would say when you recognize it, or if a loved one recognizes it in you, seek out professional help, because there are resources out here. And I know there's still a stigma in our community. However, you can't get the help unless you ask for it or unless you show up. So there are resources, and I say reach out.
Yeah.
And
I'd say too, again, don't self-diagnose.
Please don't.
Do not. You got to ask the right people the right questions.
That's right.
And the other side of that, I'm sorry, man, be proactive. We are in an age where information is at your fingertips.
Right there.
If you know that you're going to be exposed or could possibly expose yourself to trauma by, whatever your occupation is, then why not? Why not go talk to somebody? That's my thing is I hate, I don't want to say I hate, that's a strong word. It's just, it frustrates me when I feel like a lot of people wait until the problem's already big.
Too far.
Before they go get help. I always say, it's jail or the hospital. People got to wait for a tragic or another trauma. Traumatic, tragic event to happen before they actually seek the help. My thing is just like marriage counseling. Why not do it before you get married?
That's right.
You know what I mean? So
I guess when we see if they're not like functioning in their normal mentality or normal capacity, normal behavior, then we need to look into that. And again, the best person to recognize it would be people that are around you, the closest people are around you, because unfortunately we're in an isolation time of life as well, and people tend to self-diagnose and then isolate themselves, self-medicate, and then you're in a whole world of other things.
It's like I get it, I understand it. I just don't buy it. I don't think that's a good way to spend your time.
That's true. Right.
And again too, it's with things like this, it's going to affect. So we're talking about functioning, right?
Right.
The areas of functioning we always look at is school or work, home, and in the community.
Yes.
So I think a lot of people may assume that, I go to work every day, so I must be fine. That functioning alcoholic, so to speak, and they'll do that for 20, 30 years until something happens, a tragic event, a car accident, an illness, right? And then it all comes tumbling down. And then they find out, I've had PTSD since I was 10, So school, home, or school or work, home, and in the community.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could be going to work doing just fine, and maybe at home things are good, but you're getting DUIs, you're getting into fights at the bar.
Man,
you know what I mean?
That's a real thing.
You're getting kicked out of public events, and you're not functioning out in the community.
Right.
So those things, and again, it can impact more than one area of functioning. But if you're finding it impacting at least one area of functioning, it's time to get some help. It's time to tag somebody in.
That's right. If you're not having like really positive relationships, if you're, fighting
constantly in
a cycle of just not getting along with people, that's an impact of your functioning socially.
What about daily living activities?
Yeah.
And I know that's part of the work, but even taking care of your personal.
Right.
Yeah. And if an individual is isolating themselves, drinking the whole day away, that's not caring for, your daily activities as far as your body, your well-being.
Yeah.
Right.
I had a buddy, he had an uncle. He was actually our landlord. And this dude, cool guy, he worked for the same company for like 30, 40 years. But every night, this dude would drink a case of beer. Like it wouldn't even get cold before he drank a case.
Oh, wow.
And I would ask him, like, is your uncle cool, man? Is everything all right? Oh, no, he's fine. He's good. And I'm just like, there's got to be something.
Yeah.
Well, come to find out, he was in Desert Storm. And he got some friendly fire, got injured by one of his own guys.
Oh, wow.
And it messed with him, but that was just his thing. He went to work, he came home and drank. Didn't have a wife, didn't have kids, didn't have hobbies.
Right. Yeah.
The isolation, and then with the beer drinking like constantly and daily, that's trying to forget.
Yeah,
and
trying to numb it.
That's self-medication.
And nowadays we have video games.
Oh, that's a whole nother level.
Yes, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah. So
trying to escape.
Yes, the way to escape.
Yeah.
But can we relate the video games, the violent video games, to the PTSD, especially with the kids?
Definitely.
Because I don't know how much research is on that part of it with correlating the gaming, because I do know that there's an official diagnosis for that.
Yeah, gaming.
However, have they connected that with some of the kids?
That's a good question.
PTSD. Because I do believe, and I've seen it myself, it's like a lot of these teenagers are so involved with the games, especially the violent ones. What's that, Call of Duty or whatever?
Yeah.
Not trying to promote none of that.
Right.
But what it is kids can't understand that you can turn that off.
Right.
You can't turn real life off.
Pause it,
and then
reset.
they don't know how to interact with people.
Yeah. There's a guy he interviewed, he wrote a book about it, but he interviewed, and this was years ago, all the school shooters in the U.S., all the teenagers that were school shooters.
Okay.
And he said, they all came from different backgrounds, different levels of, childhood trauma, abuse, whatever, different levels of, financial status. But the two things they all had in common, they all played the most violent video games, and they consumed the sickest media. Now, not necessarily, perverted stuff, but you know what I mean? They watched, they got online and they watched violent acts over and over and over again.
Oh, wow.
And that was the two things they had in common. And so again,
and
wondering,
just imagine how that morphs.
that developing mind.
Brain. Yes.
Oh, wow.
So again, I have a love-hate relationship because I love video games.
Right.
I do.
Yeah.
I love video games, but it's like, there's a line. Not everything's for everybody.
That's right.
And, a lot of these games are 17, 18 up, mature games, but parents buy them for the kid anyway because that's what all the other kids are playing. And it's like, well, we don't let them get online. Well, yeah, but he's still playing a game about war and all the atrocities that surround war.
Come on.
The social, cultural ramifications of war on a grand scale. And again, going every day and doing that, playing that game till 2, 3, 4 in the morning, sleep deprivation, and then going to school. And then, like you said, you deal with a situation you can't just pause it or reset the game.
You want to shoot somebody. Yeah. Wow.
And that desensitization that comes with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not only shoot the guy, but shoot him in the head for more points.
Gosh.
You know what I
Like
mean?
ain't nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to sound like a hypocrite.
No.
Because I be headshotting them. I be on there. No. But you feel me though?
You need to take a break.
right.
Yeah.
Oh my
But again, and then along that though, there has been research come out recently about how like role playing games are good for kids' brains because it helps them develop that whole problem solving area.
Okay, I can see that.
Because they have to go on these quests, and you might go try to fight this boss and get your butt kicked, and now you got to go on a side quest, replan, refigure things out, and now you need this special item to go beat the boss.
Right.
And so it helps them really long term and short term problem solving, goal set.
That's good. Yeah.
But again, those aren't usually the fun games that all your friends are talking about. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So yeah.
Wow.
All right. Very true. Very
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
But
not
yes.
Yeah.
So do you guys think that when it comes to, let's take it back to COVID. Let's take it back to a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
It was a lot happening.
Oh, yeah.
And so just think about the
Racial
violence that we seen, racial violence that we seen on TV that they played over and over and over again.
I always say COVID gave the world autism.
Man.
If you wasn't already struggling,
Man, come on.
you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I met so many people got divorced during COVID.
Wow.
Or like, we're going to get married, and then COVID happened.
It was too much.
Too much. Yeah.
But yeah,
man.
I think all of us may have experienced a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Because now you still have people that if somebody's over here coughing up a lung, you probably
Yeah.
thinking, hey,
I should have worn my
get a
mask.
mask.
I should have worn. Man, it happened to me the other day. I was
do
like,
believe that. And
dude started coughing. I was
do
in
wear
line.
mine. Yeah, I wear mine regularly. I will say that.
Yeah.
I ain't
And
mad
I
at
don't
you.
know. Maybe that's a part of it. Maybe
No, I
that's
think
part of
we're
just
still
living
dealing
it.
with the ramifications of it.
We are.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
kids hated to go to school, and then they couldn't. They wanted to.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And now they got to, and they don't want to.
They don't want
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Or
That
they don't-
isolation,
Yeah.
and that played a big part on everybody's
Yeah.
mental. And maybe that's a lower level of it. And then even with the ones that have what they call the long COVID, I'm sure that's an impact too from the initial one, having a form of PTSD, because it's like now, again, we're not in a level of fear that we
Right.
were initially.
Right.
But any little thing,
Yeah.
any little thing. And I do know people that are going to the doctor's offices and to the hospital with symptoms.
Yeah.
And
That
they're not
fear is
finding
still
out
there.
it's there.
Yeah.
Especially when they can't give them a diagnosis.
Right.
It's like, hey, we'll give you something for the symptoms and send them on home. So, yeah.
And again, now that I don't want to say we're past it, but now that we've come over the hump of that epidemic, all this data is coming out
Right.
about how many people died and how many were
Yeah.
infected, and it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
And I think it brings up a good point when we talk about PTSD, because sure, I may be able to control enlisting in the military, I may be able to control living in a violent neighborhood as an adult,
Right.
but a world epidemic I can't control.
No. And then what about the not just the people who died from it, but the ramifications from the family members, because
Right.
now their mindset is on a different level. And even with tying in the racial
Man.
violence that was
Can't
going
leave- yeah,
on,
can't leave that out.
and unfortunately, we can't change our colors.
Right.
We can't code switch on that, and unfortunately, that is still an issue.
It is.
In our
Real
society,
big issue.
and that can bring off and trigger some things just in general.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
to segue just a little bit back, like into the cultural aspect of it, a lot of black folks died during COVID. You know what I'm saying? Because
Disparities.
the health disparities. So again, engage in your health and mental health care.
Please.
You have to be proactive about it. Because
Right.
these things affect all of us, but it's disproportionately affects people of color more.
Right.
So yeah.
So how can we be proactive? How can we let the audience, the community know, like, okay, we're talking about PTSD, we're talking about symptoms, we're talking about triggers. How can we be proactive when it comes to, okay, I noticed there is some things going on. What can I do? What's the next steps? What can I do now?
Yeah. There's a lot of protective factors.
Yeah.
I feel having
glad you said that.
a strong support system is
Yes.
got to be at the top. You know what I'm
Have
saying?
to be.
Right.
Yeah, and people that are gonna really pay attention. They're gonna reach out if you haven't been very social. If you haven't been very
Yes.
active, they're gonna tap in with you and be like, hey, what's going on? So having a strong support system is great. I also find as a part of that too, the people you love and the people you trust, talk to them about how will they notice when you're not doing well?
Ooh.
You know what I mean?
That.
So if there's something you do different, like if you love playing basketball and when you're feeling depressed, you stop playing altogether, right? That's a sign that they could know, oh, I need to check in. I haven't seen him at the court in a minute.
That's a good one.
You know what I'm saying? So things like that. You know me, always go back to exercise. Exercise, regular exercise.
Right.
And there's more and more research coming out about how resistance training, even if it's just body weight exercises, is so crucial to preventing a whole lot of issues down the line. You
For
know?
mindset.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, man. And so, again, diet's a huge part of it.
That's what you put in your
diet's a huge
system,
part.
right?
Yeah.
Sleeping, making sure you're good, have good sleep hygiene,
Right.
Again, you hear it, but nobody wants to, believe it. But what you put in your body, you know what I'm saying?
It's going to show.
Yeah, if you eat a bunch of junk, you're going to feel like junk. You know, if you eat a bunch of good, healthy food, you're going to feel good and healthy.
Yeah. So
nobody's got to be perfect. I'm like 80-20. 80% of the time I do what I'm supposed to do. 20% of the time I do what I want. I'm grown. I'm grown. Tell me what
balance it out. Everything in moderation. I believe that. Mr. Grown Crowd.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. Just want to put
But
that out.
everything in moderation.
Yes.
And we don't like to harp on, you got to do this, you got to do that to be a healthy person.
Right.
And unfortunately, some people think that you have to be a former athlete or an athlete to be in the gym or exercise, and that's not true.
Right.
Do what you can, and hopefully you're picking things that you like to do that will keep you motivated to keep doing
that motivation.
it. The motivation to keep doing it. Yes.
And part of that too is you put down social media. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh.
All the scrolling, you spend time scrolling. You can spend that time doing things that are positive for yourself.
Building up yourself.
And that stuff isn't real. You see these fitness influencers. See these fitness influencers. You know what I mean? That's not real. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They're showing you the best version of themselves and the best lighting and with the best conditions. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I'm not gonna say they all on steroids, but come on. Come on, man. But my point is, that's not real. You can't. If you're looking at that all day and you're trying to work out or you're trying to diet and you're not seeing the same thing you see, it's not the same. And I would say this: motivation is great when it comes, but it's not something you can rely on. So rely on consistency. Consistency beats motivation every time.
I love that.
Discipline and just doing it. Again, I can't tell you how many times I feel like junk and then I go to the gym and have a great workout. I'm like, I'm so glad I did that. You know what I mean?
Man,
that's good.
I love
And
that.
again, I'm not competing. I ain't gonna be in a bikini this summer.
Oh my God, please don't.
At all. You feel me? But you know what? I want to be around. You know what I'm saying? I'd rather be seen than viewed.
Yeah, there you go.
So that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to stay healthy. I'm trying to see my kids grow up and all that good stuff.
Right.
So yeah, man. And again too, I go back to it's not as hard as we make it seem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even for going to the gym, take a walk.
Take
Is
a
that
walk.
simple?
That's the simplest.
That's the most
Very
underrated exercise ever. And it's something you can always do.
Always.
Walk with a friend. You know what I'm saying?
Walk
there
the
you
dog.
go. Yeah, walk the dog. Get some, but to a point. Yeah, exactly. Be proactive. And again, you could be having one of those rough days, but then you fall into your routine, your consistency, and you can take that time out of your day to engage in self-care. And now when you go back to those issues, you're better able to deal with them.
That's
You're coming from a
it.
calmer place.
That's it.
A more functional place.
That's the kicker. Yeah.
So that's my thought on it.
Yeah,
I love
I
that.
agree with Salethio, and I would also add learning more self-love,
Oh, yes.
embracing self-love to get you to that self-care every day. And whether it's doing the exercising or eating better,
Right.
I wouldn't say be on a strict diet, but eating better every day, balance that part out, as well as getting enough refreshing sleep, quality sleep.
Sleep's
so
huge.
quantity is
difference.
not as big as quality on the sleep. So and that's from all ages, from the babies through the older adults. You
That's
need
right.
that sleep.
Very true.
Yep.
And the last thing I want to tie all that with is you got to be honest with yourself.
I was just about to say that too. You got to
Great
be
minds
honest.
think
I'm
alike.
telling you.
Come on.
That self-love is one thing, but you got to be honest with yourself.
Come on, be real.
Yeah,
Be
I
real.
deserve this
with
gallon
yourself.
of ice cream. I'm loving myself.
Yes, that's right.
What? You did that yesterday. What? You know what I mean? Or I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I could stand and lose a little weight. Nah, man, I'm chubby.
Got to-
You know? I'm chubby. I need to lose some weight.
You know what? gotta clear that. We gotta clear that up too, though.
Yeah.
Because being healthy doesn't mean
That's true.
slim.
Right.
Good point.
Right.
People need to
point.
understand that we're all different. We all have different genetics.
And
That's
understanding
right.
your body.
Yes.
Understanding your body, yes. So don't feel like you have to lose a certain amount to be healthy.
Come on.
Because smaller people are unhealthy as well.
Yeah, very true.
And eat a lot of junk too.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
telling
not
you.
saying me.
I told you, I was a vegetarian for 9 years. I still had high cholesterol. It's genetic, yeah.
That's
You know what I'm saying? Working out all the time, walking everywhere, still had high cholesterol.
Oh,
so, you know, it's just stuff you got to do.
go.
But I'm just saying, man, if you 16 and you pre-diabetic, come on.
Yeah, it's a problem.
You know,
yeah.
and again, I think that those things boost your overall physical health and well-being, so you're able to deal with the stressors.
Come on, it's all tied together.
Yeah.
So tonight, I think this was a great topic. We got into a lot of different segments there, but again, this is what we're here for. Your mental health matters. We want everybody to be able to take care of their mental. So you can live long, so you can thrive. You know, you can live your best life. And so this is what we're here for. Your Mental Health Matters is brought to you again by ONV. We're here on the first and third Friday, and I appreciate my people here. I mean,
you too.
Yeah. If y'all can't feel it, there's some good vibes coming through the screens here. I hope y'all feel that. And so please tune in next month. We'll come back to you with some new topics, new information, and we just love you guys.
All right.
So please protect your mind, protect your peace.
Yeah,
All right.
Take care.
It's called bobbing.
Bob, yeah,